Lawrence W. Moore, and welcome to Lesson 4 of Learning Synthesis with Pure Data. Crafty and I have a mission now. We're going to be making synthesizer modules, just like the old analog synthesizer modules where you had different units that you would connect together, and each unit would have its own separate purpose that it would do. And this is a logical way of working with pure data in building different synthesizers. It's also the way that a lot of plug-in synthesizers are designed, and they use a lot of the same terminology. So you'll be learning all about, the synthesis language, what different things mean, what the terms mean, as we build different modules. Today we're going to start with the MIDI input module. This MIDI input module will allow us to receive MIDI note data and velocity that we can then feed to an oscillator module that we'll be making in the next lesson. But first, let's just see how we can get MIDI information into Pure Data into a module that's useful and has a nice graphic interface so that we can see exactly what's coming in and what's going on. Okay, so let's get patching. Okay, so now I'm here at the website, just so you know. The download for this lesson, it's not here yet. This is lesson 3 because I'm making lesson 4 now. But just like lesson 3 has a download here for the materials that we make, lesson 4 will appear up here with the same download. So it's at lwmmusic.com on the learning page. Okay, so now I'm going to put down the browser here, and I have PD set up here. I have a folder here just for this lesson that I will zip up and upload. And the first file I'm making, which is this blank PD patch here, I'm calling MIDI in, because we're going to make a MIDI input module first. So what I'm going to do, give myself a little more space here, and then I should zoom in. So come join me in the zoom. Here we are in the patch window itself. Move the magnifier out of the way. Alright, so what we're going to do here is we're going to make a module that is going to have MIDI input as well as a few display and control items on it so that it's useful for us. First thing I'm going to do is right click on the background and go to properties. This is what's called the canvas properties, and what you can do with this is you can set up an area that will display on what we call a parent patch. Basically, the patch we make here will open up and display in another patch, and basically each of our modules will be like sub patches within a parent patch, and all their displays will show through. So what you do to do that is you check off graph on parent. I also like to check this off to hide the object name, which means this patch's name will be hidden on the parent. It just kind of clutters up the look, and so I check this off so that it doesn't appear. And then I'm going to set its size already. First, you may not know how big you want it to be and all that, but I have a rough idea. I'm going to make it 300 pixels wide. That's this X area here. You don't touch this range stuff here. You just type in size 300, and the Y, or the vertical aspect of it, is going to be 150 pixels tall. Margins I'm going to leave alone. I'll show you what they are in a minute. Just keep in mind they're both set at 100. So then what appears is this red rectangle, and it's 300 pixels wide, 150 pixels tall, and then there's a 100 pixel margin from the top and a 100 pixel margin from the left. So that's what the margin settings are. The X margin is the horizontal margin. The Y is the vertical margin. This doesn't matter to the overall look of the thing, like on the outside. It just depends on where you want it on the inside. I'm going to leave it here because that's just fine with me. So anyway, What I'm going to do next is we're going to make a background for this so that you have like a background to it that makes it look nicer. And to do that, in the Put menu, you'll notice there's an item called a canvas down here. Its shortcut is Shift-Control-C or Shift-Command-C in Mac. And what it makes is an object like this that is intended to be like a flat, whatever color you make it, background. And there's a highlight here in the upper left hand corner that allows you to click on it and go to its properties. We're going to make this canvas our background, and so I need it to fit within the rectangle. The rectangle's red border there is 1 pixel wide. So width-wise, the left and right borders each are 1 pixel wide. So I want the width of this canvas to be 298 pixels. And it's the same thing with the height, because the height is 150, but the border is a pixel each for the top and the bottom. So I'm going to make it 148. Basically, the height and width of the canvas here is going to be 2 less width and height wise than the overall area that we're working with. And then I'm going to go down here, select a color. How about this? A lighter gray, kind of a metallic look. And then over here on the label, I'm going to type in a label which will appear as like a title for this thing. And I'm going to call it MIDI in. It will eventually automatically put an underscore here. You can't avoid that. Pure Data just doesn't like spaces and things, so it'll do that. Here I could change what the label's color is, but that's fine. This will be how it looks. So I press OK, and there we go. We have our MIDI in label and canvas, and I'm going to fit it right within the rectangle. I think I got it. Yeah, I see the red border all the way around, and I don't see any spaces in between the canvas and the border, so looks like we got it right in there. Okay, so this is going to be our background. Now, what I'm going to do is make some of the visual objects that we're going to have here. This MIDI in is first of all going to take notes in. So I'm going to make a slider to display what note is being played through a MIDI device, an external MIDI device. And so I made a horizontal slider, Control-Shift-H, Command-Shift-H in Mac. Right click, go to Properties, and by default sliders come out with a range of 0 to 127, and that's just fine for MIDI notes because that's the range of MIDI notes. You can change the height and width if you want and stuff like that. I'll leave it where it is. And then down here you can change its color. Maybe I'll make it the darker gray here. Okay, and then what I want to do here is I'm going to make symbols for its send symbol and its receive symbol. What this means is this is something you can declare. A symbol is like a combination of letters and numbers with no spaces that is like a name that represents this object. And it's what I can use to send information to the object or away from the object. Now, in all these symbol names, what I like to do is use a $0 at the beginning. And what that is a local variable. It means that when this patch, this subpatch itself specifically, opens up, $0 to PD gets replaced with a number. And then all the different patches that you may have in something, because this module will be one of many in like a parent patch, and I want its symbols to all be unique. And so this way I can make a unique symbol as long as all the symbols I use within this patch have different names beyond the $0. it'll work. And it'll be unique even if there's another $0 of the same name in another patch. Because sometimes you want things to be named logically, and that means sometimes different things may have the same name. You'll see what I mean as we go. Right now, I'm just explaining why. Basically, its send symbol is $0 dash. I'll say note send. And its receive symbol will be $0 note, and then I abbreviate receive RECV. You can't have these two different symbols with the same name. So that's why I put the end of it, send and receive. So whenever I want to receive information from this object, the slider, the symbol is this, $0 note send, because that's where it's sending out of. So when you want to receive it somewhere, you have to receive what's being sent from it, or the send symbol. And then when you want to send information to it, its receive symbol is this. And so this is what you type in whenever you want to send information to this object. That's all we need to do with this right now, so I'm going to press OK. And there we go. We have this horizontal slider here. And this is going to be for notes. Now I'm going to do something here that allows us, I'll position it later after I have the other things in. I'm going to do something here that allows us to have whatever number it's currently on be displayed. You could hook up a number box to it and stuff, but that takes up more space. I like to do this. I'm going to make a patch within this patch with some things in it. Or actually, no, let me not do that first. I might do that later. Right now, just so we can see this and it's all on the same screen, I'm going to make an object called a receive object. You could type out the whole word receive or just abbreviate it with an R. Now what this is this is an object that receives information from whatever symbol you put on it. And so I'm going to put, hold on here, receive $0 dash note dash send. This thing sends out its send symbol, and that's what we want to receive here. So even though this is a receive, the symbol you're receiving is the send symbol of this object. Okay? And then what we're going to receive from it is obviously whatever number comes out of it. And that's going to go to this message box here, where we're going to make a message that tells its label to display the number. And the way we do that is use the command in the message box, label, and now we just need to type in a label. There's a few rules to this. You need to start it with something other than the variable that's coming in. So I'm going to put here note, then a colon, and then I'm going to put in a variable $1. And what that means is whatever's coming out of here into the message box is $1, because it's the first message coming into the message box, which means it replaces this $1. And that will obviously be the note number that's coming into the receive object. And then we're going to send this message back to the slider itself with a send, which is just an S, just like the receive object, except you have an S instead of an R. $0 note receive, because we're sending the information to the receive symbol of the slider. I like to do that. Crafty likes me to be accurate. Now I'm going into run mode by hitting Control E, and then I'm moving this, and I can see something isn't quite working right. Let me double check here. $0 dash note dash send. And here, send $0-note-recv. I got to double check that I have everything labeled correctly in here. $0-note, N-O-T-E, send. Up, instead of a dash, I put another 0 there. You gotta check your syntax whenever things aren't working. It's a very easy thing to do, to have a typo and then things not work. So now it's displaying note and the number that it's on as the slider's label. What I like to do to save space is position the label within the slider. And the way you can do that is right here under the label. You can say the X offset and the Y offset of its position. I'm going to move this to the side so we can see both the slider and this menu. Now the X offset means from the top left corner, where is it positioned? -2 means, like -2 pixels over, which is a small amount, so you hardly see it. I'm going to make it +3. That gives us a little room for the slider bar here when it's all the way down. And then Y offset, right up being -8, which strangely enough, negative means up from the corner here, -8 pixels up. I'm going to make it 8 pixels down. So I'll type in 8 there. Press enter. There we go. Now our label is right inside the slider. We're not taking up excess space. We can see what note number we're on and everything. Now the reason why I'm making this slider is we're going to use a MIDI object to receive notes in, but then we have the slider here because the notes will come in and then go out. But if you're not using a MIDI device, you'll be able to grab this slider and send notes out anyway. So it just gives you a graphic display of what notes being played, as well as the ability for you to change notes using the slider. Now, let us do the same thing here, but we're going to make this for velocity, because that's the other information we need when playing notes. So I'm just duplicating this so I don't have to make it again with all the same settings. But I'm going to change its send and receive symbols. Velocity is also a range of 0 to 127. And now I'm just going to change, instead of note, I'm going to make the send symbol $0 velocity send. And instead of note here, I'm taking that word out and putting in velocity again. So now it has its own unique send and receive symbols. And then if we make this for these new symbols, I'm duplicating by selecting it and hitting Control D, Command D in Mac. Now all I have to do is change the stuff here that will be different. We'll use velocity in both of these send and receives. And then in the label, it should say velocity instead of note. This is just for display, but why should it say note when it's velocity? There we go. Now if I move this, there we go. Its label changes and we're good. There we go. So now we have our note and velocity displays here. I'm going to continue to make the other displays that we're going to have in this one, and then we'll continue on from there. I'm going to make for now, this module is something we'll build on later. We're not going to make our be-all, end-all module right now. But what we're also going to want to have is Pitchbed and Mod Wheel, because those are two basic MIDI controllers that are frequently used. And so what I'm going to do for these, though, is use vertical sliders. Control Shift V. so that way they appear vertically like they normally do. We're going to make pitch bend and mod wheel. So what I'm going to do is go to this one's properties and make it compliant for pitch bend. Now pitch bend is a 14-bit controller in MIDI, and its number range is 0 to 16,384, because pitch bend requires more resolution than other controllers. So we'll make its range 0 to 16,384. And we're going to give it send and receive symbols too. $0. P-bend will be its abbreviation. Send $0. P-bend receive. This just helps me to remember the send and receive symbols by making them something logical. Everything begins with a $0, everything ends with either send or receive. Now, it's a vertical slider, so I'll figure out how I want to position it. Its label. Let's see, X offset -9 here. We'll see how this displays. We'll probably have to alter that. But let me change its color. Make it a light gray. No, dark gray is the other one. So there we go. Alright, so this will be our pitch bend. I'm going to position it here. Give it space for a label up here. Now, it may not be enough space. I'd like to keep my height and width what they are, because I like to use things that are in groups of 150. 150 tall, 300 is double that. Just works out nice, I think. So what I'm going to do here, duplicate this and make the labeling for this slider. We'll say P-bend. And I'm going to, for its label, just abbreviate it PB, because I don't want it to take up that much space. It's already going to be a large number. Hold on here. P-bend. There we go. There we go. You see, it shoots out the side like that. Well, there's really no better place of putting it. I could make this a horizontal slider like the others, in which case it would look better. Pitch bend wheels are usually vertical in position though. But I'll stick with it like this. Maybe I'll lay it down flat later. We'll see as time goes on, as we add more things to this, how it's best to position it. But I'm going to put over here, giving room for the other one's label, one for the mod wheel. But I need to go into its properties and change a few things. Mod wheel's range is 0 to 127. It's a regular continuous controller in MIDI, and so its range is 0 to 127. And then I'm going to call it mod, M-O-D, instead of P-bend. Everything else can stay the same. And now let me move over a little bit here, because we got to put in this one. Put in mod. Now, since this patch is saved to its own file, the patch itself, can be brought in to a parent patch by typing in, oh, hold on here, I don't like using caps. Oh, okay, no, that's fine. Okay, sorry. Because it saves to a file name, the $0 works. But what we're going to do now is we're going to make another subpatch for this to put all this stuff inside because it just takes up space. And normally you don't need to look at it. So I'm going to make a subpatch that is not a separate file. And the way you do that in PD is by making an object and typing PD. And then we'll say send-receive. And then it opens up a new patch window. And this patch window is inside here. So this object is really this thing here on the inside. And this is where we're going to put our stuff here. So what I'm going to do is select these things. Because since this is a sub-patch built within this patch, these sends and receives will still be considered part of this patch. And so I just paste them in. Now it pastes them where they were in the original patch, so I'm just going to move it up to the top corner. Resize this window a little bit. There we go. Now it will fit in there. And what I did there was a Command X copy or cut and then paste. Command B. Save and close. So now those things are there. They're just inside here. If you right click on it and go to open, there it is. So these things are inside this. It's a way of making things cleaner. You can nest things inside subpatches, so that way they're not in the way. So let me move these sliders here. All right, mod. And yeah, there's still room with the Pitchbed label and mod label, so we look good. Alrighty. So now these are all the controls we're going to use for now. We'll add more to it later in other lessons. But let me show you. Now, just temporarily, we're going to come back to this because we need to actually make the stuff that does stuff. But I'm going to close it. I'm going to go here to File, New, and I'm going to save this file to disk. And I'm going to call this Modules. Now notice, I saved it to the same folder. Oh, I didn't. Excuse me. I didn't save it to the same folder. This is somewhere else on the computer. I don't know where, in fact. So, let me go to this folder. Alright, here's the folder that I want to save it. And I'm going to call it Modules Save. There we go. So now this file is over here, right next to the MIDI in file, right here. This is the patch we just made. This is the blank window that we just saved. This is going to be our parent patch. If they're in the same folder, well, that's what you need to do this. Basically, in my modules patch here, I can make a blank object, type in its name, MIDI underscore in. You don't have to put a .pd extension on it. And now our MIDI in subpatch is appearing within the parent patch. And this is the idea. This is where basically we'll have a MIDI module, and then we'll make a sound producing module here, a tone generator, and some other modules as we go. And then we can add to each of these as we go. Right now, we need to go back and finish this one because it doesn't do anything right now except have sliders. You can do this. You can right click on it and go to open, and now we have this other file opened. And anything we do here and save will save to the file name. and it'll save to the file name MIDI in. When you're naming things like this and putting subpatches within other patches from file, you got to make sure you follow the rules. The name of the file needs to be something that is already not a PG object, like an understood PD object name. It also needs to not have spaces, and it's case sensitive. So I follow the rule where I always use underscores instead of spaces, and I always use lowercase, so that way I don't have to worry about case sensitivity. So anyway, here it is. And when you have this open, it goes gray here. It grays it out because currently this subpatch within modules is now open and we're editing it. So anyway, as you see, our subpatch within this patch contains the sends and receives, and it works. We're good. So now let's take MIDI information in. To receive note and velocity, use one object for that in PD. It's called note in. And when you make a note in object, you'll see it has three outlets on it. First outlet is the note. Second one is the velocity. So these are almost like a pair. As new notes are played, their velocities come through. And when a note is released, its note number and the velocity 0 come through. That's how you turn on and off notes. And over here, this is our MIDI channel. When a note and velocity is received, it says whatever channel is received on here. This is where you can construct some patching to limit things to a certain channel. And we actually, I think, are going to do that just to be safe. And the way we can do that is the following. All three of these I'm going to give number boxes. That way, as we're testing this thing out, we can see what numbers are coming in. And when you're testing stuff, it's always good to see the numbers that are flowing out of things. And also for learning purposes, that way you can see where information currently is, what the values currently are. These are just regular old number boxes. Control 3 or Command 3 in Mac is a shortcut for them. There we go. So, this is channel, this is velocity, this is note. I think I'll label these. So I'm going to its properties and have the label display on top, and we'll say channel for this one. Alright, move it down, give it room to be. This one's going to be velocity. This labeling is just so we know which one each one is for learning purposes. There we go. And this one here is going to be note. So I go to its properties, label it note. Alright. Now, I'm going to do this. I'm going to make sure my MIDI keyboard is set under the media menu with MIDI settings. I want to make sure my keyboard is set as the input device. Typically when you open PD, nothing's set. And so I'm going to select the SL Mark II. It's a keyboard I have. Press OK. My keyboard may be off. So let me check that real quick here. Well, it's on. Okay, I'm not getting anything, so let me double check again here. MIDI settings. Oh, I set that as the output accidentally. Input is SL Mark II. Gotta make sure you set the right box. Okay, there we go. So it's saying, all right, MIDI channel 1, and here's the note and velocities that are being received as I just randomly hit the keys. That's because right now my keyboard's set to transfer on MIDI channel 1. But if you want to make some different synth module sets that respond to different MIDI channels, or you can select what channels they receive on, you need to set up a mechanism for that. So what I'm going to do is make a number box, but this is going to be a special type. It'll be the number 2 box, as they call it in PD, which is Command or Control Shift N. And it gives you a box like this. It looks a little different because it has this little triangle to the side. And when you go to its properties, it allows you to change colors and all sorts of nice stuff. So I'm going to label it first, channel. And I'm going to give it a color here. And I'm going to give it a range. So that way when you're setting it, it doesn't let you put any numbers in that are outside its range. There's 16 MIDI channels, so I'll make it 1 through 16. And then up here, its width only needs to be, let's see, it's a 2-digit number, so it only needs to be 2 wide. That's the number of digits, not pixels. So I'll put this over here for now, or you know what? About here. I'll move these other guys down a little. As we add more things, this display may change. I may even make these horizontal because they take up too much space like this. But for now, let's just go with it. Okay. So now, this is where the user can select what channel you want to receive on. And over here, we just need to make a mechanism so that whatever channel's set here, if it doesn't receive from that here, it doesn't do it. Now, what we need to do is make something that responds to whatever number is being sent to it. And that could be a select object. SEL is its abbreviation. You can type the full word select, but might as well save space. And then I'll say by default it should be 1, but that can be changed over here. And I hook this up to the right inlet on the top. Now, what a select object does is whatever is coming into its left inlet, if it is the number that you set by default here, or whatever number gets set in through the right inlet, this is just a default creation argument. Basically, it means from the start it's 1, it's selecting ones. But anytime you send a number from here into the right inlet, it will do that number instead. It'll still say 1 here, but it doesn't mean anything anymore beyond that point. That's just the creation argument whenever the patch opens. It's good to have one there to start. And so it'll be 1 by default. And then that means if a 1 comes in here, it sends a bang out this outlet. And what we're going to do is make that bang into the message 1. And you'll see what I'm doing in just a moment. Now, if it's not that number, the right outlet will send out whatever number it actually is. Now, if we want to see what that number is, you've got to make a number box. But more importantly, when something comes out here, meaning that the channel that the note and velocity are on are not the channel selected, I want it to send a message of 0. So I'm going to translate by using the trigger object. It's an object with a T. And I'm going to basically trigger a bang, abbreviated by the B there. And so when something comes in here, it triggers a bang. You basically converted floats, which are these numbers, into a bang. And the bang will basically hit this message box here that is number 0. as a message. So it's almost giving us like Boolean logic here. True or false. Is the channel that note and velocity is coming in on the channel that's selected? Yes, 1. 0, false, if it is not. And what these ones and zeros are going to do is control an object called spigot. And by default, spigot's going to be open because I'm going to put a 1 on it. Now what the spigot object is it's like a valve that opens and closes. Basically, you send things through its left inlet, and that will come out its its left outlet, so long as the spigot is open, like the valve being open. And by default, this is open because I put a 1 there. But it can be turned off when this message hits it here in the right inlet. And now I need to hook up this 1 also, so it can be turned on or off depending on whether the information coming in is the selected channel or not, which is sent here. So let me make another one for the velocity as well. So this way, note and velocity come in. They only go through if they're on the selected channel. And then the next place they're going to go is these sliders over here. So right now we'll see them. We'll see the actual note and velocities change. Don't worry about the patch cable covering up the display here. These get hidden on the parent patch. You don't see them, in other words. And so you can have them overlapping it. There we go. So now, let's do this on the outside. I'm going to close this, which means now it's displaying here. I'm going to go into run mode so I can touch things here. Right now this is set to 1. Let me just make sure the 1 goes through. There we go. And then I'm going to hit my notes and velocities here, and you see the note and velocity changing as I play the keys of the keyboard. Now, if I set this to 2, since my keyboard's transmitting on 1, the spigots are closed and the note and velocity doesn't come through. So that's the idea. It needs to be on, whatever channel you select here. And so this way you could have multiples of these MIDI modules in a patch, and you could have them set to different channels. I'm going to open it up again, because one thing I always like to do, just to make sure stuff is set up a load bang, to make sure that when this thing opens, stuff happens. And basically, since the range of this number box is 1 through 16, by default it'll be 1 when things open, but I want to make sure this load bang bangs it through so the 1 goes through. Well, I did give this a creation argument of 1 too, so it's probably not necessary, but I'll just let it be anyway. There'll be other things I'll load bang in this adventure as well. Now, so our note and velocity are coming in, and then we're going to send them out. I'm going to make an outlet here. And what we could do is make an outlet for each of these, and then you'd have 4 patch cables coming out of the bottom of the object going to wherever you want to connect them. But I like to do this. I'm going to pack our information up into a single message. And so I'm using the pack object. And what you do as its creation argument is say how many of whatever type is going to be in this overall message. And what I want to do is put together all 4 of these. The channel doesn't need to be known by anything else, so that's not going to be sent out. But note, velocity, pitchbed, and mod wheel will be sent as information to other modules. So I'll make 4 Fs here, meaning 4 floats, and that will be our message going out. Now, I'm going to hook this up. The first in this packed message will be note. Second will be velocity. Then we have pitch bend. Then we have modulation. And then you connect this up to an outlet, and basically all this information gets sent as a single message out one outlet. So it's almost like, let me close this. Here on the outside, you have one to be in edit mode. Right here, this is the outlet. You don't see it because we have this background canvas. If I moved it, for example, just move it to the side. Since it doesn't fit within the background, it doesn't display the canvas at all. Now you see that there is an outlet there. I clicked and it's saying, hey, something changed. Do you want to save it? I'm going to say no, close it. But anyway, right here, that's our outlet. But let me open this up. See if I can Control Z. There we go, move it right back into place. But since the first outlet is always going to be the bottom left corner, I have it right here, so I don't need to search for it, even though the canvas covers outlets. So now this is a packed message that carries all four of these streams of numbers. But we need to do one more thing. Well, actually a couple more things. We didn't hook up the mod and pitchbed yet. But also, we need to do the following. As note and velocity, pitch bend, and mod wheel things change, these numbers get stored in the pack object here. The only time they go through is when a number is received here, through the left inlet. Because this receives what they call like the float and a bang, meaning do it. So when you update these other numbers, nothing will happen. But we do want velocity, pitch bend, and mod wheel to always come through. In other words, we want this overall message to always be sent when a new number comes through. And so what I'm going to do is set up a trigger mechanism to make sure it's always sent. Don't have to do it with the first one, because when that changes, it always sends the message. So I'm going to do a trigger bang float, just like we did a trigger over here, where it converts whatever comes in, sends out a bang. Here, the floats, the numbers to come in, are going to be sent out through the float here, which is the second outlet. And a bang comes out this one. So now what I can do, hook this up here, and hook the bang up here to the left inlet. The other ones don't receive bangs, just this one. And that basically says send the message. And so as the numbers come through here, it'll always bang this to send messages. I just need to make the same triggers for the other ones. So let me do that. Just making space for them here. Duplicate. And one more duplication. So this will be pitch bend here. It comes into that one. Straighten the patch up there. There we go. And then connect its bang to here. Getting a little cable crazy. And I'll do the same thing with the other one. Just to make this look better, let's do this. Kind of do them diagonal. Doesn't look a lot better, but at least you can see where the cables are going. Alright, so all three bangs are hooked up. And all three floats are hooked up to the float inlets there. Okay, these are hooked up. I didn't hook up velocity yet, which I'll do now. There we go. So now, when any of these other things change, the message is sent. So basically, since the numbers store here, whenever this updates, it'll send it out, the whole message, because it keeps in memory here what the other numbers were. So they stay there, and so as numbers change, it sends it out, but uses the last number received for everything else. And so there we go. We now have our MIDI output from this module. And the next and last things we need to do here is send information to these two sliders, the pitch bend and the mod. And we're going to do this with the same setup as we have here. Basically, we're going to have the same spigot setting here. Actually, I'll copy that in a minute. Let's first make the objects. First one, pitch bend. In PD, it's called bend in. And now what it receives here, I'm going to duplicate channel because the right outlet is the channel once again, just like in the other ones. I'll duplicate this but change it. I'm going to label this what it needs to be in its properties. It needs to be, let's say value. That means what is the value that is being sent out by pitch bend? It's basically its amount. Range of 0 to 16,384. Hold on, get it in there. There you go. There we go. So now we have those coming in. But once again, I'm going to set up a spigot. So I'll just copy this one here, this whole setup, so that pitch bends that are received through only the selected channel will come through. Let's do this. I like to try and make things neat, keep Crafty happy. Put this over here like this. There we go. Get in line. There we are. And so now I'm anal. Yeah, baby. There we go. Keep them straight. Keep them on the straight and narrow. There we are. Now, so this is going to be then hooked up to pitch bend here. Now what I'm going to do is, by default, your pitch bend wheel is in the middle, meaning the pitch is not being bent up or down. And the middle point is actually the number 8,192, which is half of 16,384. So I'm going to make a message here, hook it up to the load bang, and by default, when this thing opens, that's what your pitch bend value will be. Because otherwise it doesn't receive that until you move the pitch bend wheel. If you don't move it, by default it'll be at 0, because all sliders just basically go to their minimum value when they start. So I'm in run mode, I'm going to click this, and there you see it goes right to the middle. That's how we want it to be to start. Because eventually when we get to the modules and stuff, this is going to control the pitch of our carrier oscillator. And so we want it to be 8192, in other words, in the middle to begin with. Next, one last thing. What I'm going to do for this is actually duplicate what I have here. It's the same structure is what I will be using. The only thing is, it's not going to be bend in. This is going to be a MIDI controller, and in PD you have CTL in as your object, And then the creation argument that you put in next is what controller number it is. I'm going to put 1. Otherwise, you get 3 outlets on this. But here, mod wheel is MIDI controller number 1. So this means only mod wheel information will be received here. Still has channel. And then, of course, its value 0 through 127 comes through there. And we have our spigot set up, so we need to connect this here. Now, one thing I forgot to do is connect these other select boxes here and here. They need to be connected to these other selects here. Basically, I take the channel, get up to the right inlet of each select box. Make sure it's the right inlet. There we go. So now the selected channel will come through. I'm going to close this now. And I'm going to basically test it out here. Moving the, oh, yeah, that's mod wheel right there. And pitch bend here, up and down. The thing is, I have like an XY joystick, so sometimes the mod wheel I accidentally move up. There, keep it all the way down when I'm doing pitch bend and mod wheel like this. There we go. All right, and if I change the channel to 2, the keyboard's transmitting on 1, so now all these should be blocked. And they are mod wheel, pitch bend block, note and velocity block. Very good. And there you have it. This is our MIDI in module. And out here from its corner comes out all the MIDI data that we're receiving, which is just 4 things right now. And this will be enough to get started on some basic modules. And so in our next video, it'll be still part of the same overall subject here, going modular, but it'll be making the actual oscillator module, where we'll be able to receive the note data and have it play the notes that are being sent. And we're going to set it so that the pitch bend also can bend the notes that are sent in. So that's it for this lesson. I'm going to zoom out here and basically turn off my magnifier. Burp. There we go. Basically what you'll have is MIDI in this folder for this lesson, lesson 4, and modules. When you open up the lesson, if you open up modules, you'll see MIDI inside it. For example, let me zoom out again. It automatically zooms in whenever I do that. There we go. So the modules contains it. And what I'm going to do for the next lesson, lesson 5, is copy both of these patches into there, and then we'll make our next module. And we'll name it, and it'll load into the same parent patch called modules. Okay, well that's it for this lesson. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll continue with some closing thoughts now. Okay, so once again we're going to have some closing thoughts from Crafty here, although this time Crafty wants to do things a little bit differently. Crafty wants you to know cock-a-doodle-doo, cock-a-doodle-diddly-doo, cock-a-doodle-doo, cock-a-diddly-diddly-diddly-doo, or don't, as the case may be.